Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. A lot of crystal balls going around right now. A lot of people have them. I wish I had one, but I don't. I don't know where people are getting their crystal balls from. I don't know where they're getting them. How do people know what's going to happen with the America Party? Because people have tried third parties before and they didn't work? Okay. But they weren't the same, were they? They weren't headed up by Elon Musk, who owns a bunch of companies and has a big... They weren't headed up by a guy whose child was turned trans by Democrats. You know, I don't know. It's just really interesting on how many people try to speculate on things. It's fun to speculate, I guess, you know? But again, it brings me to this idea of, okay, if you're going to speculate, and this is a real question, do you speculate for the worst possible scenario? Because the argument being that we can prepare for that. Or do you manifest the future by speculating and predicting good things? That's a real question. I don't know. How can you A/B? You can't have two timelines and try both to see what happens, right? So ultimately, since you can't tell whether manifesting good things in the future works, and you also can't tell that predicting the worst things prevents them, then really what you're left with is which one makes you feel better. And I have a hard time imagining that predicting doom and gloom and loss and failure and destruction make you feel better now. Does it? I don't know. Maybe there's some weird twisted thing where feeling terrible now is actually a good thing later. I don't know. That doesn't work for me. Worrying, speculating, it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't make me do better things with my life. You know, it's much better to just be optimistic and hopeful. And some would say, "Oh, that's naive. You're just naive." Am I? Is it naive to create happiness for myself and to put myself into a more positive mindset? I mean, let's just be realistic. Let's say I am facing a wall of death and it's approaching me. And I can't, and the walls are closing in. The zombies are closing in and there's no escape. You know? Is there anything wrong with whistling a tune and enjoying it and making jokes? You know? And looking the zombies directly into their eyes? Dancing with some of them? I don't know. But I don't see the purpose of predicting the bad thing, you know? I don't. I think about it. I try to think, okay, maybe there's some value in predicting the worst, you know? I don't know. I think it's also just strange how quickly people change their minds about things. I mean, again, I'm engaging in it right here. You know, I don't know Elon Musk. I never met him. I've never met Donald Trump. I don't know any of these people. So even the conversation about it is kind of ridiculous because it's all imaginary. It's all based on what I believe about things, you know? And I've tried to keep myself away from belief because that's how we get into these speculative things. Of course, there's also the thing that Pam Bondi, haven't met her. Cash Patel, haven't met her. Dan Bongino, haven't met him. Released a letter saying that there was no, that Epstein actually killed himself, and that even though there's 10,000 hours of footage of him apparently molesting children or whatever, that they didn't find any client list, that he wasn't doing it for that, and he wasn't actually blackmailing people with them, you know? Even though, we've heard stories about him having a place with cameras in every room and Epstein Island. And certainly in this story we've all been told, there's plenty of reason to think, oh, this story looks like a story of a person that's blackmailing people, getting them, it follows an extreme version of, any other secret society and blackmailing programs that we've heard about. But see, that's what I'm saying, is also these are stories. Because I personally have not been blackmailed. I haven't been blackmailed by Epstein. I was never invited to go to his island. Never met the guy. So there's so much of this. Now everybody's going, well, Bongino, Cash Patel, you guys are all liars. You guys are all frauds. Okay, sure, maybe. But why did any of us, why does anyone put their trust in these people anyway when, for the most part, we've never met them? I don't know anything about them. There's a bunch of stories being told, and you don't know why the stories are being told because you're not there. So whatever story is coming out, you either believe it or you don't believe it, and you decide to believe it if you want to, and you decide to pay attention to it. There's a lot of people out there in the world that have never heard any of these names. Probably nobody listening to this has never heard them, but maybe, I can think of people that I love in my life that probably wouldn't click on this, siblings or whatever, because they're so bored to tears with all this stuff that I doubt most of them know any of these names, besides maybe Epstein, because the name Epstein has reached the late night talk shows and whatever. But yeah, some people I know just don't. I think your average person on the street, if you were to interview about these stories, they just don't know about the stories. And it's tempting to go, oh, well, they should. Really? Really? Should I? How much of my memory and my imagination has been used in this whole Epstein thing? With every little bit of the story, who's using it, who's telling the stories, what do they have to gain? And I have to go back to, what do I know about the Epstein thing? The only thing I know about the Epstein story is that it was a story that's been delivered to me through my little glowing box. And that every single thing that I know about it came through this little glowing rectangular thing that I'm holding. Most of it was words. I don't think I saw some video of Epstein. One of them, he's dancing next to Trump at a club. And I've seen people talking about him again on this phone. Nobody talking true life. It's not like I sat at a party with anybody and they told me about Epstein. I saw a list of people that flew on his plane. I don't know where the list came from. I don't know if it's legit or it's not. I saw a former friend's name on the list. I know her, was on tour with her, slept underneath her on the tour bus, Did I think that anything happened, hanky-panky or weird shit went on with her? No. I think she probably she was a rock star. She got an invitation to a party and went. Probably went home early. I know, because I've been to many parties with her. She always leaves early. That's the closest I come to knowledge about it. The rest is just all imagination. It's all what I've imagined. And all these different people, so many people have speculation. They've speculated. Everybody's speculating. I don't know any of the victims personally, but so many people are telling stories about this. And if there's one thing for sure, is that people's imaginations really like to fill in blanks. And they're easily titillated by the worst of the worst stories. You can see this clicking around on YouTube. You can see it, I mean, especially women. Oh my God. Lifetime Network. You ever turn on the Lifetime Network? I don't know. I haven't had cable for 20 years, but I remember back in the day, every time you click on Lifetime, it's about somebody raping a lady. Like every single show is woman gets raped. Woman gets raped near Christmas. Woman gets raped near Thanksgiving. Woman gets raped on vacation. Woman gets raped while fighting off a mountain lion. That was it. So I mean, we know that so many people they want to imbibe. Okay, most of these people are never going to get raped by mountain lions at the but for some reason, and I don't know, maybe there's a biological function. I like to think of like rubbernecking on the freeway. When there's a car accident, everybody slows down. They want to get a look. And if they don't want to look, they kind of do want to look. And I think there's some little bit of a survival instinct that is in there because you want to see what's a possibility. What did he do? Did he do something? He deserved it. What you're trying to pick up data to survive, I think. And I think that's what we're doing with media, too. And not to sound like a broken record, but all this stuff is brand new. Think of it in terms of how long humanity's been around. Allegedly, I don't know. For all I know, humanity started the day I was born. I wasn't around any time before I was born. I trust that my parents were alive before I was born, but I can't prove it. Okay? But I can certainly imagine that history's been around and people have been around for a long time. There's a lot of evidence that I've seen with my own eyes that the earth is old and humanity is old. I'm living in an old house. It seems old. It looks old. Smells old. But largely, it's human beings like to rubberneck. They like to tell dark stories, campfire stories. They like to scare the shit out of themselves. They like to scare the shit out of their friends. So when I hear these stories, I mean, going back to when I was a Mormon, it was really popular to scare yourself. And I don't know. I mean, this is kind of a chicken or egg thing, but boy, was I scared of Satan. Oh, shit, was I afraid of Satan. Like any scary movie that came on, I remember there was this one with a motorhome and satanic people chasing the motorhome and, a circle around. That thing gave me nightmares. Well, not literally, but it just scared the shit out of me. I didn't like it at all. But I noticed how often, like at slumber parties, and even at fast and testimony meeting, at church, and at scout meetings, and everybody wanted to compare their Satan stories. Oh, the devil was here, and the devil did this, and it would freak me the fuck out. Scary. But how much time did the religious people talk about that stuff? And it seemed like everybody wanted to one up the next guy about their brushes with darkness and how Satan almost got them. And, and they told these stories about in the dark and this and a voice and just really spooky shit. So I'm pretty familiar with whatever it is. I'm not saying these people lied, about their stories, but I don't know. I lied. I used to lie about shit when I was young, and sometimes I believed my own lies. The microphone, they had this thing called fast and testimony meeting when I was a Mormon. And it's basically like open mic night. It is open mic night. It's open mic day, where people are encouraged to get up and bear their testimony. And a lot of times these stories like I'm talking about would be passed around that day. Most of the time it was people just repeating the same boring shit that, I believe in the prophet, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe this, blah, 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 blah. And you could get emotional doing it. But I remember a lot of times getting up and just saying stuff to either convince myself or to convince everybody else, or, who knows if I believed it or not. It's hard to say, but there's this power in that, in just communicating with others, and kind of no matter what you're saying, I don't know. The inclination to embellish, to lie. I mean, I'm an artist, for fuck's sakes. That's all I do every day, writing songs. You take a story that's true, and then maybe you pepper it with a little bit of more to impact it. Well, that's what music is doing. Obviously, if you can just tell a story about the time you got lost as a child, you can tell it, and it's perfectly fine. But if you make some art out of it and you put some music underneath, some suspenseful music, and you can really emphasize things if you want to. And that's what art is. That's what music is. They're these secret little magical powers. We don't know where they come from, but we can do it. And that's exactly what an artist does. When you sing a song, you are crying in tune. And if you're not crying about the thing you're not crying in the moment that it happened, you're doing it on purpose. It's like, okay, now tell the story about this, but pretend like you're crying and use the power of music. It's very manipulative. It's a performance, And so maybe I'm projecting, but I see that I recognize that inclination or that impulse to do that in other people, to tell the story, to exaggerate, to get the attention of others, to reel them in, to pull them in. Every woman I ever dated, I've been talking about this with a friend of mine. She was talking about, she's an online friend, met her one time. She lives in a different country, but she was talking about how her boss made a break, and she noticed she couldn't trust her boss anymore because her boss was totally stupid about one thing. And I was responding or she's like, I can't trust my boss anymore. I just can't trust him. And I said, well, that's kind of like me with everybody. I just can't trust anybody anymore because in my life, everybody I've met, to one degree or another, wanted to control me. They wanted to control my emotions. They wanted to control my eating patterns or my sleeping patterns or whatever it was. It might be big. They wanted to control the direction of my car. Can we stop over here? Can we do this? Let's do this. I'd like to do this. Everybody has, no matter what, to one degree or another, to a huge degree, others to lesser degrees, but everybody would try to exercise control. And very rarely was it straightforward. Usually it was emotional. Usually there would be roundabout ways to getting there. Encouragement, a little bit of embellished truth here, a little bit of embellished lies there, a little bit of this, to get me to go their way. And I don't know. And I'm just seeing this play out on a large scale. Like, anyway, what am I trying to say here? I just don't think we need to be believing these stupid stories, we get through this little communication device, the glowing screen. I don't see the benefit from it. I certainly don't see the benefit from speculating on whether or not Elon Musk is going to destroy the world with his brain chips and his self-driving cars. And the world hasn't been destroyed. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Of course, I'm not living in Gaza, so my world hasn't been destroyed. And I trust that Gaza exists, I'm not a complete fool. But is it part of my reality? And should it be? Do I need to make the Israel-Iran thing my reality daily, on a daily basis? Do I need it affecting my thoughts, my dreams, my decisions? Do I need to be sitting here formulating nuanced opinions about Putin and Russia? I have some Russian friends. I like my Russian friends. In fact, a lot of my favorite people have been Russians, and they live there. They're there. Some of them want to talk about it. Some don't want to talk about it. Some of them moved back after the shit went down. I got a brother that lived there for a couple years for the Olympics, but I don't talk to him anymore because of fucking COVID and Trump. He's basically a beta male Democrat. No offense if you're listening, you know who you are. You've admitted as such. It's hard to have bravery. But being so wrapped up into it just seems to be kind of crazy to me. The whole idea that everybody's going crazy about the Epstein things, People just need to slow down. How does this jibe with my senses? 500,000 kids are being sex trafficked, okay? Really, though? Really? Because I don't know any of them. I don't know any people whose children went missing and were sold into slavery. These stories seem very convenient to drive fear and rage. I mean, they're Hansel and Gretel. These stories have been around forever. Stories kind of created for the sake of lore, or maybe, I don't even know that they need to be created for that. I don't even know that people need to write stories to manipulate people, because what it seems to me is people just fill in the blanks anyway. You can just barely get the ball rolling, and people will put horror into every blank that they can find. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, because we haven't seen any of this Epstein Island sex tapes. We weren't there. But yet everybody's got this script, this movie that they've played in their mind. I write songs every day. I do this thing. I invented this game called Ping Song. And I played it with a number of different people, and a couple of albums have been dropped with Ping songs. It's just ping pong, played with two players, one line at a time. You write the first line, sing it, send it to the next player. He writes the second line, sing both lines back, and you're always singing the whole song back until it's done, right? I play it every day. My brother, one of my brothers, has become one of my most constant pingers, and it's really fun because when you write a line and you're thinking, you have to go, okay, where is this story going? There's two people. You're the audience and also the writer. So you hear a line and you go, okay, what comes next? But sometimes little conflicts will happen, because the person that writes one line, if they don't respond the way that the person has a movie in their head, the idea is that you should try to keep from don't think ahead, because if you think ahead and if you write ahead, then you're setting everybody up for disappointment because the other person doesn't know where the song is going. So if you get your mind, anyway, the way it happens is sometimes after the song is done, or sometimes you'll get frustrated in the middle of the song because they didn't rhyme the right way, or they misunderstood your line in a way that upset you. It's like, that's not the way, But again, they're just responding to what they hear. And the language we use is like, well, in the movie that I'm watching in this thing, this is what happens. And sometimes you go, oh, I see why you got that. Because sometimes you put out a line and you think of it one way, and the person that hears it, they hear it a completely different way. They're hearing a totally different story. Same line, but they're hearing a different story, But anyway, that's what we do with the bits of information we're getting through life, And of course, I'm kind of just a non-believer in a way. I'm just a guy that I try to go with knowledge because there's so much knowledge available to us. Everything you experience firsthand, all knowledge is firsthand. There's no such thing as secondhand knowledge. Everything that's secondhand is belief or suspicion or, but it's not knowledge. Tasting chocolate is knowledge. Reading about chocolate, I don't know. I've never known. Has somebody described the taste of chocolate? I don't even know how you do it. How do you describe chocolate? Creamy, delicious. I don't know. How do you describe chocolate? You have to taste it. Anyway, that's knowledge. And the knowledge that we have, or let me say, the knowledge that I have about Jeffrey Epstein or about the future is exactly zero. I have no knowledge. My one connection, that friend that used to be my friend that apparently flew on a plane with him, I haven't talked to her about it. And quite frankly, I'm such a bad person, such a bad friend, that most of the time when my friends and family are telling me stories of things that they know, I don't really believe them. I'm terrible like that, Because again, like I said, it's like there's so much. There's so many reasons why so much temptation for people to manipulate others. I grew up in a family of 18 kids, and I don't even remember how many step-parents. And every fucking one of them, to one degree or another, was trying to get something done. They had their own little agenda, and they're all trying to manipulate the other people around them to get it, I was like that. I still am. Look at me making this recording to get you to think the way I think. There's no fucking reason I should be doing it, but I'm doing it. So yeah, I'm projecting. Maybe I'm projecting onto you, but I just see these patterns. I see that happening everywhere. People filling in the blanks, people writing their own movies. Oh, Epstein. Oh, look at that. Look at this video. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at the island. Oh, look at these lines. Oh, they're blue and white. Oh, look, it looks like this thing. It looks like that thing. And everybody's putting these little pieces in there, and the story's taking shape. And this is what it is. It's huge. It's grand. It goes to the highest levels. There's a secret cabal that's unreachable, and nobody knows who they are. It's the perfect way to disappoint yourself. To tell yourself a story and decide that it's true without having any ability to disprove it. And the problem is people get so addicted to the stories that they tell themselves, and they try to turn these stories into knowledge. They mistake belief for knowledge. Oh, I know. Oh, we know. We know. Well, we know this. Tucker Carlson one time, at the beginning of that Joe Rogan interview. Well, we know that there's UFOs. We know that they have this. I'm like, we who? What do you mean? What are you talking about? I don't know anything about this. Why are you saying we know? Why are you trying to drag me into your fake belief / knowledge thing? It's not knowledge, you dipshit. Don't say you know things you don't know. Just say, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. If you want to engage in the speculation and the crystal ballery, at least admit that that's what you're doing, that you're telling yourself a story based on things most of the time you read on fucking Facebook or fucking Twitter. You know what I mean? No practical knowledge of any of it. Yet how many of us are wrapped up in these stories that, for all intents and purposes, to us, are complete fabrications in our own imaginations? Because even when somebody tells you something, if they just tell it to you using and you didn't see it, you put it in your brain and you either decide to believe it or not believe it. But regardless, nothing has happened there. You have not witnessed anything. You didn't see anything. You've just placed some data into your brain, and then your imagination turned it into something else, you know? And that's all fine and good. But the real question, to kind of bring it back around to the beginning of this stupid little tape, fake tape. There's no tape. There's no tape. It's digital. What good is it doing me? What good is it doing you? What good is it going to do you to worry about Elon ruining the world? What good is it going to do you to imagine that Trump's the Antichrist? What good is it going to do you to imagine that Revelations was real? What good is it going to do you to believe terrible predictions about the future? What? Was my mother edified in her life by believing that the last days were just around the corner? She spooked the fucking hell out of me. You know, it's the end times, end of the world, pillars of fire, you know. And then we look for that training made me look for, could have been this, could have been, but it's all fucking spooky shit, scary shit. To what benefit? Who is benefiting from that? Am I benefiting from it? By being scared? By being nervous? By being worried? No. And that's why largely I'm not. Because I look at the birds. And I look at the dogs. And I see that they're not affected by any of that stuff. You know? Or at least they don't seem like it. You know? They don't have the box. They don't have the glowing box. I know they have imaginations because my dog will have dreams and barking and legs will be flailing. And it all seems like running on the beach or barking at a stranger, you know? So they have imaginations, right? I've noticed the pigeons that visit my deck every day. I feed the pigeons on my deck. And I notice that they have their own strange rules and a little bit of, I think there's got to be some lore attached to it. imaginations. There's a hierarchy. They respect me in the hierarchy. And they're not rules that I have not trained, I have not taught these pigeons anything. I didn't try to, but I see that they have rules. And I don't know how they're passed down. I don't know how they're passed. I watch how they interact with each other. I know their names. I band them. Any of the birds that fly into my house, I band them. So I recognize them, because some birds are very easy to recognize. They're very beautiful, and you just know. And there's some birds just by personalities just go, I know that bird, whatever. But once you band them, then you really start to see who they are, and you can see their personalities unfold. So there's certainly beliefs that go within that. Like there's one particular bird named Edub. He's my favorite bird. But he doesn't come to my deck as much anymore, because twice he had near misses with a hawk. But that's not belief. He has knowledge that there's danger, potential danger on my deck. He knows that the possibility exists because he's experienced it, right? Now, the hawk comes and goes, and anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but there is a little bit of belief, but they're not sitting around fucking freaking themselves out with a glowing box. And you are, and I am. And we think we're higher on the food chain or higher on the totem pole. We can't even fucking fly. We're idiots. These guys can fly around. They can fly around. Yeah, anyway. Amazing. And they're not freaked out about Fauci. They're not screaming for justice. They're not demanding a list, the client list. I demand the client list. And being totally disappointed when somebody says, yeah, well, we didn't find one. Which is plausible, because it's also plausible that the entire story that I've been told about Jeffrey Epstein was mostly fabrication from the beginning. Because the people telling these stories have at every step in the chain, somebody has something to gain. Just as I have something to gain by making an audio tape conveying my ideas. There's a slight, otherwise why do it? Why do anything if there's not something to gain? The person who crafts the best tweet, gets the most traction. And guess what? Unfortunately, traction comes from telling the creepiest shit. Sex sells, tragedy sells. If it bleeds, it leads. Every step along the way, there's an incentive for somebody to just nudge the story in an ever more salacious way, And I think that happens. At every step. The volume gets turned up. So it is plausible to me that when the details come out, things are a lot more boring than people hope. And the evidence that I have of that is that life is kind of more boring. It's beautifully boring. Let's just put it that way. It's beautifully boring. Most of the time, there aren't bombs and bullets flying through your windows. That most of the time, there aren't child molesters just snatching kids off the street, 500,000. Most of the time, there aren't brothels filled with children, Thailand notwithstanding. Anyway, I'm going off the rails. I'm just saying that the more you limit your life to your actual knowledge, and I guess this won't work for everybody, and I'll acknowledge that right now. My life has been pretty good. I didn't get noodled. I didn't get diddled when I was a kid. So I'm you know, I'm coming at it from a different experience. Yes, my life was weird. Yes, there was lots of marriages and divorces, too many siblings, lots of crazy shit, not enough love for my mom, not enough love for my dad. But there was no fentanyl abuse. There's no physical child abuse, no sexual abuse, you know? Beautifully boring in that respect, and I know that other people don't have that. So I can certainly understand why some people, why if you are abused over and over as a kid, I can certainly understand why the outlook might be that everybody is, and I'm the naive one. Okay, yeah, fine. But I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with this premise that usually life is beautifully boring, you know? Usually you don't die in the plane wreck. Usually you don't get shot. Usually you don't, the odds, the math is that you're going to live a nice little life and die a somewhat uneventful, dignified death. So, anyway, that's my story for today. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary